And Lucas, I'm so excited to have a conversation with you about your absolutely fabulous new novel, Where We Go From Here, your YA novel. And yet, well, I'm certainly not young, but I loved it, and I think it speaks
Thank you.
to all ages. But I think it's particularly so meaningful for young people to read because there's so much here to learn, about sexuality and about HIV, about prevention. It's as someone who's been writing about HIV and prevention and treatment for a very long time, and who's been living with HIV myself for the past 20 years. I really loved how accurate this book is. I mean, to be honest, it's a very, very up to date reflection of either treatment on one side or prevention on the other side. And yet what's so wonderful is that it's all wrapped in a story that is so moving and so funny and very, very easy, I think, for young people to tap into. So I wanted to ask you first, Lucas, I wanted to say congratulations. This is your debut, is that right?
Yes, my debut
Your
here in
literary
Brazil and in the US.
It's being published both in Brazil and in the US.
Yes.
All right. And by what publishers?
Here in Brazil by Record and in the US by Scholastic's Push.
Okay, wonderful. Well, congratulations on that. That's so
Thank you.
exciting. So let me ask you. So you're a writer by morning and a librarian by afternoon, as we were just
Yes.
talking. So your life is books, words, 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 and books, books, books all the time. So for your book, what inspired it? Where and how did Where We Go From Here begin, and how did it evolve?
So the idea of this book came when I was doing my master's and I was working at Fiocruz, working there as a librarian. And Fiocruz is a foundation here in Brazil who both manufactures the retro antivirals and do research on HIV and AIDS and another kinds of conditions. So I was there. I was working in a public health magazine, doing my librarian work of seeing references and seeing if the references are right. And once and then, an article pop up my attention, and it was an article about how Brazilian people perceive HIV in the 21st century. It was a series of interviews with different people and how are those perceptions. So when I read this article, I saw a lot of things that I thought in my head that we already passed behind us. Like, I don't know, we can contract HIV if you sit it in the same place of a person who is HIV positive, or if you kiss someone, or I don't know, an undetectable person still can transmit the virus. And I know that a lot of this was false, but I wasn't aware that this is not common knowledge. So I think to myself, what can I do for engaging this conversation? And I like to write, and I like to write about young people, and I like to write for younger readers. So I thought, why not talk about HIV in a contemporary perspective, talking about how it is to live today with HIV, because a lot of books and movies that I saw focus so much on the AIDS crisis, and is wonderful books, is wonderful stories. One of a lot of them is favorite to me, but I don't want to tell a story on the AIDS crisis. I wanted to tell a story about how it is living today with HIV and how it is different from the 80s and from the 90s. So I wrap it up, all of this research and all of these thoughts in the lives of those three different characters and how they deal differently with the virus. And I'm so happy that you like it. It means so much to me.
Well, I think a lot of people are going to be really moved by it. Do you have the book with you right now?
Yes, it's right here.
Oh, okay. That's such a great cover. Would you mind setting it up for us a little bit? Just tell us a little bit about the characters and set it up, and maybe read the first page or two, because if I remember it, you jump right into the narrative. So would you do
Yes.
that?
Yes, of course. So this book, it follows the lives of three different characters. There's three different points of view in this book. The first one of them is Ian, and just in the first chapter, that's one of the things that I wanted to do. Ian is in the treatment center to do his HIV tests, and then he discovers that his test came back positive, and he's now HIV positive. And his road kinds of turns upside down because he doesn't know what it means to be an HIV positive person. And while in the center of treatment, he knows Victor. Victor is also there doing his HIV test because he found out that the boy he was seeing, that is Enrique, the third character, Enrique has HIV for 3 years now, but Enrique already are undetectable. They have protected sex, but Enrique only talked about his condition to Victor after they had sex. So Victor are kind of upset about it and kind of freak out that he might have contracted the HIV virus. But his tests came back negative, but he sees Ian going out of the clinic in a very bad shape. So he decides to put Ian and Enrique in touch because Enrique already passed those initial fears and might be of some help for Ian. So that's it. These three lives, different lives, and all of this is talked in a very light-hearted way, with a lot of fun, with a lot of clubs and going outs and drag queens and because that's the life of people living with HIV now. It's not a life of sadness and misery. It's a life filled of color and life. So I'm gonna read the two first pages. Is okay?
Yeah, sure.
So let's do this. Chapter 1, Ian. The first step is admitting to yourself that no matter the outcome, life goes on. The clinic is packed with people walking in every direction. To the left, a child is running in circles while an exhausted mother tries to calm her down. To the side, a man in his 70s rocks back and forth on a cane, refusing every courteous offer of a seat. A little farther down, the door to one of the exam rooms is ajar, and a doctor is scanning a medical chart for information, while a woman sitting across from her waits anxiously. To my right, a tall guy with a blue streak in his hair is staring at his phone, his foot tapping as nervously as mine. And I can tell that even though he's looking at the device, he's not paying the slightest bit of attention to it. And in the middle of all this hubbub of doctors and nurses walking this way and that, of people dissatisfied with the with the long wait time for appointments and a dusty fan that makes more noise than ventilation, I wait. Ian Gonçalves, a woman with shoulder-length blonde hair and the coldest blue eyes I've ever seen, looks at me. A folded piece of paper rests in her hand as she closes the door to the lab behind her. She has wrinkles that she's probably tried to cover up with Botox injections, and the full lips of someone who's tried rejuvenating fillers. And there's a gold necklace with the heart-shaped pendant hanging from her neck. I press my finger against a cotton ball that absorbs a drop of blood, and ask myself if those cold blue eyes bring good or bad news. I nod, and she signals for me to stand up. This way, please. She turns her back to me and walks to a door at the end of the hallway. She doesn't even look to check if I'm following her. Maybe she's just used to the veiled nervousness that comes with getting tested for HIV.
That's terrific. That's terrific. And from there, of course, we go on a winding journey with Ian and Victor and Enrique and Carlos. So many characters. And you're right. It's a lot of the book is really just about being young and having fun and being out in the clubs and negotiating intimacy and your health and intimacy and your family life. Let me ask you this. What was the most fun part of writing the book for you?
Oh, I guess the most fun is Eric, who is the roommate of Enrique. He's a drag queen. Yes, yeah. He's a drag queen who are preparing to do his Cleopatra night on a nightclub. And I don't know, he's one of those friends. Enrique tells this in one particular part of the book that Eric is the only person that he discloses his HIV positive status and still answers his calls. and because they are friends since they are 15, and when Enrique found out about his HIV positive status, he kind of thinks, oh, everyone will gonna let me down, everyone will go away. And Eric is this friend that stays close to him, and there's a lot of pep talk with Enrique, and a lot of bad jokes about how they are crazy. He are crazy for hearing Metallica instead of Beyonce, because that's not something that a gay man should do. I guess he's a very fun character, and he puts a lot of those heavy moments into a little more light perspective, because he has a lot of advices for his life.
Right, right. Every good story needs a good sassy drag queen, right?
I couldn't agree more.
What was the hardest or the most challenging part of writing a book for you?
The hardest part for me, there's two that I consider the hardest. I don't know, there's a lot, but two pops up. The first one was the research, because I'm dealing with a kind of a sensitive subject. So I didn't want to put wrong information, or put information that could be misleading, or misguide someone to do this or that. So I have to be extra careful with the research, and to do a proper job, because there's a lot of things that people still presume about HIV, and a lot of things that people assume as truth and that they aren't. So I have to deal with that, and I guess I made a good job, because I don't have complaints about the research, and so that makes me very happy. And the other part for me that was very, very challenging was to write Victor's perspective, because Victor is the most prejudiced character I've ever written in my life. Even with all those privileges that he has a very good and warm family, a family who accepts him being a gay man, but he still has a lot to deal with himself about his prejudice when it comes to HIV. So there's a lot of things that he thought that there is not something that I particularly thought. So I have to sleep on his shoes for a minute and write those things that's hurtful for when he talks to Enrique sometimes, because I knew that his growth was important for the book.
Right. Okay. Okay. Terrific. So let me ask you this. The book talks a lot about two things that are very important to understanding HIV in the contemporary context. One is the idea of undetectable. The idea that if you take your medications, the virus is undetectable in your blood on lab tests. And we've also known now for a decade that means that if you're undetectable, you're untransmittable. You are incapable of transmitting the virus to others sexually. So the treatment is also a form of prevention in terms of not spreading it forward. And also, we now, at least I think it came first in the U.S. starting in 2012, and now it's in other countries. We have PrEP, we have pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is an HIV prevention pill that many people now take. That basically, we call it the birth control pill for. It's not just for gay men. I mean, it's also taken by some cisgender women and transgender women, but we've called it in shorthand, the gay man's birth control. Tell us about those two things. How widespread is undetectability and PrEP in Brazil, and how well understood are they by the general public, or even just by the LGBT community?
Yeah, I guess that there's two different cuts. When it comes to the LGBTQ community, the treatment is very widespread. I don't know, we all know about the treatment, and Brazil's treatment is one of the best of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we can brag about it. But when it comes to PrEP, at least from my notion, because I don't know, I'm not as much as an activist as you are, so I'm not engaged in every conversation about HIV. It's a lot about what I feel and what I see in the people I follow and in my bubble, I guess. But the PrEP talk is not a talk that as widespread as the prevention talk, as the treatment talk.
I see.
Sorry.
Is PrEP available? Is it universally available in Brazil?
Yes, PrEP is available both in the public health system as in the common pharmacies if you wanted to buy it, or you can take it from free as much as the treatment. But there isn't a lot of people that I know particularly that takes PrEP. You know,
Mm.
I know HIV positive person, I know people on treatments a lot, but I don't know a lot of people who takes PrEP. Maybe because I don't know a lot of people, but I don't see the whole PrEP conversation as far as the conversation about treatment, because I guess the treatment is very more advanced and people are realizing that it is important to be on treatment and it is important to be undetectable. And the conversation about undetectability, it's very more widespread in the LGBT community, but there's also a lot of prejudices inside the LGBT community on HIV positive people. With all this undetectable talk, even then people are like people's in Enrique's life. You know, when you say to someone that you have HIV, you are HIV positive, the people stop talking to you, and then so that's happens a lot here in Brazil. All right.
Do you think there's a lot of people who think that it's fake news, that undetectable means untransmittable?
Oh, I unfortunately yes. There's not something that I never thought about it, to be honest. But we are in the fake news age, you know. So I guess there's a lot of people who might think about that.
Right, right. Now, let me ask you, getting back to the craft of the book, did the structure or the plot of the book change for you as you wrote it? Did you outline that in detail before you started writing, or did it evolve as you wrote?
You know, when I start a project, for every project that I made, I do not start by the outline. I start by writing. I have this one glimpse of idea and then I jump into the writing. So with this book was kind of like that. I started because I know that I wanted an opening scene with a character discovering that he has HIV. So I start to write this chapter of Ian. And then while I wrote the chapter, I described this blue-haired guy sitting next to him. And then I thought, well, this guy might have a story too. So I started writing this other chapter about Victor. And then I thought, well, his guy are upset with another one because he did not disclose his HIV positive status. So who is this third character? So I started to write Enriquez without planning, just fancy. And then after I wrote these three first chapters that I seated, that I start to outline the plot for the book and start to list what I wanted to talk about it and how do I want to talk about it. And I guess it was a very good choice of mine to use these three characters because they are in very different stages of their relationship with HIV. So I wanted to tell a story that was not, I don't know, oh, I don't want to see the life of Ian in the span of 3, 5, 6 years. And a year, I have to do a story, a very short story. I wanted to do a story that passed in a month, 2 months. So I guess that when I use these three characters to talk about different stuff that happens when people are talking about HIV, I guess that was a good choice.
Right, right. Okay, okay. Let me ask you, one thing I was really struck by was that it didn't feel, even though is it set in Rio or Sao Paulo?
Yeah, it's a setting Rio.
In Rio, right. And but I was struck by the fact that it didn't seem too overly specifically Brazilian. I mean, there are some things that are specific to Brazil, like you mentioning food or something, but it overall felt a bit universal, like it could have been set in any number of cities. And I wondered, was that deliberate on your part? Did you want it to not be too specifically Brazilian?
Not at all. This story, one of my fears when Orlando reached out to me to publish this book in the US was people in the US will understand this novel because there's a lot of Brazil. To me, there's a lot of Brazil. And I guess that as I don't know. The U.S. are I don't know. He's a kingdom of culture. So uh, we are struck by everything that is American in our movies and our books and our way to consume things and our way to write, even the YA range. And I guess that when I wrote it, I wrote a book specifically for Brazilian audience. I wasn't even aware that this book was going to be translated. It wasn't even on my thoughts when I write the first version of this book.
Ah.
So when Orlando reached out to me and said that this was an universal story, I was very preoccupied because there's a lot of Brazilian treatment there about HIV in this book. There's a lot of about going out in a club in Rio, but I guess that it's the same in the US. And those little things we did have to change a little of those things. Like, I don't know, there's a reference to a Brazilian TV show that you guys don't know. We changed it to some American TV show, but it was
Oh,
but it
okay.
was very, very punctual. It was not something that changed the voice of the book in its original language. It was just something to be more comfortable for an audience that might not know a lot about or music or pop culture.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's interesting. So let me ask you this. I mean, another thing I really liked about the book was that it felt realistic in terms of people's reactions um, when they learned that other people had HIV. Like it felt very mixed in the reactions you presented. Some more enlightened and supportive than others, and you certainly showed that not everyone is kind of immediately okay with it. But for some, it takes time and education to become more comfortable with it. Was that deliberate on your part? Did you want to show a very varied range of reactions to that news?
Yes, that was deliberate, different from the whole universal story. Because as I grew up in a very conservative house. I had a lot of problems to come out as a gay man when I was young. And I was one of those people when I was younger, very prejudiced about HIV and about HIV positive people. And as I grew up, as I inserted myself in the LGBT community, as I engaged myself in those conversations about the virus and about HIV and about living with the virus, a lot of my prejudices was coming down, and I start to understand that there's a person, there is not a virus or a walking virus. There's people who live with that on a daily basis. So I wanted to talk reactions that there's some of the reactions that I don't know. It's my mom's reaction, and there's my best friend's reaction. There's a lot of different reactions because of that background that I grew up with.
I see. Okay, so you were really trying to realistically depict the fact that it's not utopia, and not everyone. Certainly, in my experience, people did not always say all the things that I wished they'd say. Right when I first told them, very often they would come back to me, and say, "Oh, I didn't realize that. Treatment is actually very easy and effective now," or etc. I'm pretty sure it's interesting. This is a little technical, I think, but I think I noticed that one of your characters is on Sestiva, and I'm not sure what it's called. It's the Faverins. Is that still a current drug in Brazil? Because precisely because of what you talk about with the loopiness and the crazy dreams and the nightmares and stuff, that it's not really used here much anymore. Is that still the standard of care in Brazil, or?
It's one of the options. It's not standard, but efavirenz is one of the options, and it was one of the options that I researched when I was by starting the book. The book was wrote in 2017, but there's I don't know, an umbrella of options, and that's the one that he takes. And there's not very much thought about why he takes this option, but I guess that's the option that I heard when I do my research and I talk to the infectologists and they told me about these options, these different options, and I used one.
Okay, I see. I see. So I'm curious, as I'm sure you know, here in the U.S., we have a president that has really, I mean, I think I would say overall LGBT people they're not at the top of his list of scapegoats when it comes to trying to rile up his base. I think that's probably more immigrants and, refugees. However, he certainly has tried to cut back protections for LGBT people. And, thankfully, including with our most recent Supreme Court ruling, which was a shock to me, let me tell you that, given the new makeup of our Supreme Court. But thankfully, he's been prevented from doing taking back some protections for LGBT people so far. Are you comfortable talking about what LGBT is like under your president currently, and also if it has meant what it has meant for people with HIV/AIDS?
Yeah, I guess that we have pretty much the same president, but our president is like, I don't know, his little child, I guess, or tries to be his little child. But we have a foundation of our treatment culture here in Brazil is very strong, because while I was doing research and reading the governmental papers about HIV, the logic of the state giving you the free treatment is that the state failed you when it comes to prevention and protection to contract the virus. So if you get the virus, the government understands that he's responsible for getting you in treatment, because when he tried to educate you on not getting the virus, he failed you because you get it. It's a very simple. Yeah, it's very simple. It's not that very simple, but it's that. And our presidents are also, they don't like the LGBTQ community, not at all. He tries, every time he can, he tries to poke it. But there's a lot of another issues regarding corruption and regarding, because I don't know, the president has a lot of sons who are in the political sphere also, and he has a lot of trouble with his sons because all of his sons has a different problem, and he had to deal with all of that. So right now, as of June 23 of 2020, I don't see him cutting our achievements or cutting our rights, but it's something that concern me, and I guess that concerns that everyone in Brazil, because I don't know, the treatment for the government is the only option of treatment. We do not have another options. It's universal, it is free, but it is the only option. So if the government changes that, it will be there that it's gonna be a lot of impact in the lives of everyone who are on treatment.
Right. Can I ask you this? I mean, one thing here, in the Trump era, we've also had sort of unprecedented levels of activism, that unlike has been seen in this country in a really long time, whether it's the Black Lives Matter protests and activism that are, raging around the country and the world, or whether it's LGBT or whether it's women's issues or immigration issues. What has How activistic is Brazil right now? Is there strong resistance in the streets or elsewhere to this administration? How is the LGBT community holding up? Which is actually one of the questions that was asked by Sydney. But I'm curious to not just ask about the LGBT community, but to ask about LGBT activism. Is it robust right now in Brazil?
Yes, we are living in the era of dichotomy here in Brazil because at one side we have a lot of pro-democracy that I guess that should be everyone in our side fighting for the rights of Black people, of BIPOC people in general, and the queer community and the LGBTQ community in one side, and of the other side we have the people that are supporting our current president, and I don't know why, but that's not, I'm not inside everyone's head, but and I guess the activism is pretty woke and is pretty active right now, but we have this problem where what you see on the street is not the same as you see on the television and on the news, because there's a lot of protests that we don't know about, or we know about when while they are happening, and we cannot engage and engross these movements because we don't know about it. We use a lot of social media. I guess social media is what keeping us on eye of everything that's happening, and I don't know, it's a very awkward time to this dichotomy, because at one side when you have all those people fighting for democracy, we have police brutality, and we have the police trying to wipe out the protesters, and at the other side, the side of the president, the supporters, it's all, I don't know, Brazil is my country, yo, red and yellow and green, and it's like summer for them. Nothing happens to them. And I guess there is a very uneven balance in this, but I guess that our my side, so to speak, because I pretty much enjoy democracy, and I don't want it to be in an authoritarian governmentship. I guess our side are being more and more, I don't know, beaten up by the whether the police or the some of the far right winged activists.
Right, right. And here in the US, we're all sort of on edge in terms of what's going to happen in November, and which way, whether we're going to reverse course or whether it's going to get worse, and we're going to slide more into the sort of a nationalist, authoritarian state. What about Brazil? What do you think is going to happen? How old are you?
I'm 28 years old. I'm laughing because my agent is right here by my side, and she's laughing at my joke, because when someone talks to us about, oh, how do you see Brazil in 3 or 5 years, we just laugh nervously because we truly don't know. Because when we think that things might go to the right way or to be better, something happens, and I don't know, takes a buckle of ice cold water in our faces. And since this administration came in 2018, I guess it's now 2 years, we are seeing a lot of things that keeps getting worse in terms of economy. I don't know, our currency, it's $1 costs for us six, and 2 years ago was four. So the things are going down for us. And yeah, she just wrote it to me. We don't have a health and an education minister right now, and we are in a pandemic. And there's a lot of wild and crazy things happen. And I wish that things could get a very brighter way in the next election. But at the same time, I saw a lot of these supporters of Bolsonaro, and they are a very engrossing voice in social media because of the bots, like the Trump administration. But what you see as you are engaging with your family for a dinner, for example, is that your father and your mother, in my case, for example, they are very Bolsonaro supporters, and I guess that's kind of wild. And I guess that we have to rely on the youth, in the young voters, and to make them understand that if things don't change sooner than later, it will go bad.
And is that the main divide in Brazil? Is it old versus young in terms of political orientation?
Yes, I guess that's old versus young, because older people have this idealization of the past as our dictatorship was something good, because there was no violence during the dictatorship, there was no corruption. Of course they have, but they are not on the news because they could not be on the news because of a dictatorship. And they are very attached to that past, that past that they live. When I was young, I could run on the streets by night, and I could, and there was no robbery, there was no murder. But of course there has, but they are in a privileged position that they don't see that happening to them. But right now, and with the rise of social media especially, we are hearing a lot of marginalized voices that we didn't hear 20 years ago. So we have to understand that we are in a very complex country, and because all countries are complexes, but we are in a very complex country, and there are very different demands for different people. And but coming back to your question, I guess yes, young versus old to me is the main fight we have here right now in Brazil.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, that's a big dividing line here as well. As you've probably heard, younger people poll much more progressive or to the left across all issues. Just to come back to the book, what do you want readers, especially young readers, to take away from this book?
I guess that I want them to take that having an HIV positive life does not mean that you will live in sadness forever, and it's just something that happens. It's not something that will define your life. And you can live and you can learn and you can make mistakes just like everyone else. And you just have to pop a pill once a day, and it's not that much of a big deal. You have to go to the doctor once in every 6 months or 4 months, which everyone should do. So I want to people to stop being prejudiced without getting the proper information, because I guess a lot of the misconceptions and prejudices of HIV comes from misinformation. And when people start to realizing that HIV positive people are people, they can understand a little more about how it is to live with the virus and how it is to fight with all those things that people have to fight in the course of their lives.
Right, right. And what would you like HIV negative folks to take away from the story?
That you could have a sexual relationship with a person that is HIV positive, and if you don't know their status, you just use a condom, please. And talk, have conversations. We have to naturalize the HIV conversation. It has to be something natural. We don't have to shadow it, to put it in this place of secrets. I want to live in a world where people have the same reaction as one of the characters have, that the character says, oh, I'm HIV positive, and that, okay, let's do this, because I guess that's the proper thing to do. So I guess that's what I want people that HIV negative to take from it.
Okay, okay. And before we started the official event today, we were talking a little bit about your writing schedule. You write in the morning and then you go to your job as a librarian in the afternoon. Very curious, for someone who's constantly surrounded by books, who are your influences?
My influences on books, I doesn't even finish this book, but I'm reading Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, and I guess that he will be a new time favorite. In terms of YA, I love Abdi Nazemian. I know he is a friend of yours, the writer of Like a Love Story. That is a book that resonates to me so much. I read it last year. And those foundation influences, I guess it is Portuguese writer José Saramago. He is a writer who talks a lot about social issues in fables and in blindness epidemic, or what would happen if the no one wins the election. So he has this kind of thoughts. And Gabriel Garcia Marquez, which is a Colombian writer, He's a writer of magical realism, and I read once or saw in a TV show that here in Latin America we have just so many surreal situations when it comes to politics and when it comes to the life, that we are very engaged in magical realism because we are already living in madness times, you know. And in Brazil, Machado de Assis is a very big influence. He's a classical writer from the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th century. And a lot of my folks, because I have a lot of YA writer folks, and we change a lot. We trade a lot about what are we working on and what are we reading, and all of them, they are my influences also.
And you touched on the next thing I wanted to ask you, which was, are you working on, can you tell us what you're working on now?
I don't know if I can talk about it. Maybe not, because there's still on the ideas spectrum. But I'm working on two different projects now, and the two of them are YA, and the two of them are set in Brazil. And I finished those two drafts, and now I'm correcting and waiting for the revisions, and that's all I can say. Please don't pressure me.
Okay, that's fine. I know how we writers want to be very, keep it close to the art, close to the vest, until it's ready for prime time. Do you think that are you going to stay in the Y? I mean, I know the line has really blurred between adult and YA in recent years. Are you going to stay in the YA genre, or do you want to try to write outside of that?
I love YA. I am pretty much adore all that it represents, and all the readers and how the readers respond to you, because they are so young and they are so witty and they are so heartwarming. But I do love fantasy and science fiction. I started my writing journey when I was 15, 16, writing about other worlds and spaceships. And I also love adult comedy, so I guess that's something that I would like to do in the future. I don't know, a bunch of queer people inside of a ship and they do crazy stuff as adults, not as young.
That sounds interesting, to say the least. I can think of a few genres that might fit in.
Yes.
So, this was great. And do we want to, I don't know if any of the folks listening, do you want to ask a question of Lucas? And you can just put it in the, we did have this question from Sydney that we touched on a bit, Lucas, asking, how important is community to you in the book? What does community, specifically the LGBTQ community, look like in Brazil?
Yeah, the we have, I don't know, I pretty much think that it is very close to the US experience, because we are at the same time, we are a very close community to one another, but we still have our intern fights, you know. It's like a family. You do not engage with everyone in your family, and you have fights once in a while. But yeah, the aspect to me that is not very good is that we have a lot of racism, and we have a lot of transphobia and a lot of homophobia inside our own community. So, and I guess that's awful. I do not engage with that at all. But I don't know, to me, community, I like to say that community is what saved my life, because as I said before, I came from a very conservative family, and I came out very late in my life. To me, I was 25, I guess. 3 years ago, I came out as a gay man. And maybe a little less, I don't know dates anymore. But the people that are my friends are still my friends, and a lot of people that I came out to are also on the community, so I don't have a lot of issues on that. And they are the people that I come to talk about something that I don't feel comfortable to talk about with my parents or with my family. And I guess in that sense, the found family is a subject that I like to to talk about a lot, not only in this book, but in everything that I write. I like to talk about this so-called found family because I guess it is very important for queer people.
Okay, terrific, terrific. And another question came in. Do you see it? It says, it's from S. It says, was there a particular book that helped you to understand or contextualize your identity as a queer person? If not, is there a book aside from yours that you would recommend to young readers figuring out? Well, I think where we go from here is the number one recommendation coming out of this event. But what about other titles that have been influential for you, Lucas?
Yes, I in Brazil, YA queer books they came to us very late. I guess David Levitan was the first author that we have in translation here in Brazil, and I guess it was 2012 or 2013. The Two Boys Kissing came to Brazil, so it was my first experience reading a queer YA novel. And this book resonates so much to me because there's a lot of different points of view, and the main point of view is about two boys that wanted to break the world record of the longest kiss of this history. And the story is told by I don't know, a collective voice of all the gay men who died from AIDS during the AIDS crisis. So it is a very beautiful book and one that I recommend nonstop for everyone who's asked me. And another book talking about identity that I read last month was Felix Ever After by Casey and Callender. It's a book about a transsexual man who are still dealing with his identity even after he take all the treatment to transition. And I don't know, I guess it's a very important book because people that are struggling to define their identity must realize that once you choose your identity or what are more comfortable for you, it's not set in stone. You know, you can still deal with with your identity throughout your whole life. And this book portrays this so beautifully that is one of the books that I will also recommend forever and forever.
Okay, terrific, terrific. And we have a question here. Have you had any pushback or censorship for writing about these topics for young people? As a librarian, how do you and your colleagues help kids find this kind of material? By which I think the questioner means material about sexuality, about being LGBT, etc.
Yes. For the first question, I was very surprised because I did not have any kind of pushback on this book particularly. We have this whole situation in the Brazilian book fair of last year when the Rio de Janeiro governor said that he wanted to censorship all the books that talk about sex. But for that, he meant LGBT books. He just wanted to censor that and wanted to wrap it up in black plastic and said it that it was censored. And if people want to buy it, they have to have this in mind. So this famous YouTuber bought all the books, all LGBT books on the fair, and started to give them for free for everyone, wrapped in a black plastic, as the governor said that he would do. So that was pretty amazing. But we have a lot of discussions here in the publishing business because I don't know, there's a cover that cover I can give to a kid who are dealing with his sexuality and whose parents are homophobic. And we have a lot of those discussions because I remember when the Two Boys Kissing was published, we people have to change the cover. We do not put two boys actually kissing on the cover because we know that that will be a lot of people that wanted to read the book and will not be able to read the book because of its cover and because of of his title. So it is a struggle to find that balance between be proud and be out and talk about what you want, and at the same time think that there are a lot of people that cannot consume what you produce if you put it in the world in the wrong in not in the wrong way, but in a way that might cause some discomfort for them. So we have a lot of discussions like that when we are thinking about covers and about titles of books. And unfortunately, we still have to take these side roads, you know. But I also want to reach a moment when I can put a flag, a rainbow flag on the cover of my book, and put it on the bookstore, and people can buy it without even have this concern.
Right. Let's hope we get to that point. Here's a question from Orlando. What has the response been like in Brazil? How long has the book been out in Brazil?
In Brazil, it's been 2 years. It will be 2 years in August.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
Yeah.
what has the response been like?
Yeah, in Brazil, there are very positive response. People send me emails and send me messages, and one of the things that is very surreal is how much people are excited about this book being translated into the US. You know, people people are very they took this book as if they are the writers of it, so they are very proud. They share a lot, they talk a lot, they talk about it a lot on social media. And this is kind of awesome because I feel myself sometimes as this little peek on the blank of the page, and you know, oh, the first YA author of an LGBTQ book. And it is pretty amazing. And there's this last week, and Jonathan Van Ness, the star of Queer Eye, recommended this book. So people are cherish this, like, I don't know, like it's carnival.
That's absolutely fabulous. That's a great endorsement to get.
Yes, one that I could not expect, as I did not expect all of this happening to me in such short notice.
Right. That's fabulous. Yeah, and he came out recently with his own HIV status.
Yes.
Okay, are we Melanie, are we going till 5 or
Yes. So you've got about 5 or 6 more minutes.
Okay, great. So here are some more questions here for you, Lucas, if you're hanging in there, okay?
I'm fine. I have my water and I have your company.
Okay, good. In that case, this question says, how has it been to grow your readership to a new country and a new language? Do you feel an author's responsibility with their books, especially regarding BIPOC, LGBTQ plus representation, grows as the audience and fans grow as well?
Let me see if I understand this question, because there's a lot of it that we can talk about.
Maybe we can break it down. Why don't we
Yeah.
ask you first, how has it been to grow your readership to a new country?
Yes, I was very insecure about my English and about all of the reception that this book could have, because I don't know, people in Brazil, they are very kind, they are very supportive, despite all the trolls and all the haters. We have a community that they are smaller than the US community. So when I was able to publish my book in one of the most talked languages of the world, of course that I was a little bit scared. And but I guess that the main response so far, because this book is out not even a month in the US, but I already have a lot of reviews and a lot of responses, and people are very much engaged in the same way that the Brazilian people are. So I guess that is wonderful, and that just reinforces what Orlando, my editor, says about this being an universal story. You know, because people from different places of the world. I have this reader from the Philippines who answered me and said that he read my book. He read my book and that he pretty much enjoy it and like it. So now I can reach another spaces and another countries, not only the US, but because I know there's a lot of people here in Brazil who can read English, and I know that there's a lot of people in other countries that can read in English as well.
Okay, terrific. And did you write this question, Melanie?
No, that question is from Bruna.
Well, it's the question, do you feel an author's responsibility with their books, especially regarding BIPOC LGBTQ representation. What I just don't. It seems like an intriguing question, but I'm not sure what the question is.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer as I read it, as I understand it. Bruna, I know Bruna. I guess that is the Bruna I know. I know a Bruna.
Okay. Hi, Bruna.
Yeah. But I guess that I understand that the conversations must grow as much as the community grows, and as the questions about identity and about sexuality and about all of those things are putting on the table. I guess that we have to reflect that in the things that we write and the things that we produce, because I don't know, this book is a book about three gay young men, so we have only the G on the LGBTQ of the words. So I guess that as I grew up as a writer, as I grew up as knowing different people, and as I grew up understanding different things, I can put that in my book. I don't know, not in a main character's perspective, because I don't feel that I'm able, for example, to tell a first point of view story about a transgender person, because I don't have this experience, and I know that there's a lot of people who has this experience that are very much more engaged than I to do this. But I guess that we can be strong allies, because as our work grows and as our readers grow as a community, and a lot of readers start to appear, even now, still now, because of the book getting published in English, there's a lot of responsibilities that we have to deal with, because we kind of became one reference, and I guess we have to take that responsibility and work that as much as we can in a better way.
Okay, I see. And someone also asked, do you have sex ed in Brazilian schools? I mean, I know that from writing about it quite a bit here in the US, it's quite a patchwork, and there really is no guarantee, especially depending on where in the country you are, that you will get accurate, comprehensive sex ed, and you are kind of left to other sources of information, whether it's, thankfully now a lot of it happens over social media, or different advocacy groups and nonprofits, etc. But there's really no guarantee of comprehensive sex ed. What about in your country?
No, we do not have at all, I guess. We have a little bit. It's sex ed is like those pictures of very different diseases and how you should not have sex. That's kind of the sex ed here in Brazil. And because here is a very different when it comes to the independence of states. We have this federal administration to schools, and they are the main source of everything that people will learn in the whole country. We don't have this independence that you in the US have from state to state. So as of right now, we are in a very right-winged government, and we have we have tentatives. There's this thing that there's a lot of sexual educators that put a pamphlet with questions about gender identity and questions about how to prevent from ISTs and the STDs. But the government said it was something that was made to convert people in gay or in trans, and they banned it from the schools. So there's a lot of people that's trying to put sex ed in a very healthy way, but there's a lot of pushback on the government that we have right now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And that there's much of that here as well, actually. And there are even efforts in certain states to pass laws that prevent teachers or schools from educating about the LGBT side of sexuality. And I guess this fight just goes on, right?
Yes, I guess.
Lucas, this was so wonderful. I loved talking with you about your first book, Where We Go From Here. And I hope it finds just as robust an audience in the US and in other English-speaking countries as it has in Brazil. And I'm just so excited to see what comes from you next. And I'm so excited for one of us to get to the other's country so we can meet in person.
Yes, please come to Brazil. We have to say it because we are Brazilians and we harass a lot of famous people with, please come to Brazil.
Well, Brazil is big time on my bucket list. And so, yeah, I'm sure it will happen at some point.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Melanie. Thank you so much, Tim. I was very nervous because I don't know, this is 101, and you are such a great activist and an amazing person doing your job here in NYC. But it all works out fine, and I'm so grateful for have this opportunity to talk a little about my book and about what it is living in Brazil and how maddening it is sometimes.
We hear that. We hear that. Well, you've written a terrific book, really, a really beautiful story that is so easily accessible by, young people and others, to really have a really sensitive and empathetic and accurate and up-to-date picture of what it is to either live with HIV right now or to prevent it. About sexuality, about being LGBT, and I just think it's such a delight, Lucas, and it's so fun and funny as well. I mean, you do a really great job of, wrapping all the important stuff up in a story that's really just delightful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Lucas, and thanks all of you for joining us. Help spread the word about this beautiful book, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.